Hey writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Rachel, Author Engagement Manager at Kobo Writing Life.
And I'm Tara Kremen, Director of Kobo Writing Life. This week, we are talking to Trudi J, Cheryl Phipps, and Wendy Vella from the Self-Publishing Authors podcast. Known as the Spa Girls, they are from New Zealand and between them have published more than 150 books. They've been self-publishing since 2013, and Wendy Vella alone has sold more than 4 million copies of her historical and contemporary romances. Their podcast, the Spa Girls podcast, has continuously been publishing weekly for more than 450 episodes, and it's often on the top podcast for writers and publishers lists. You should check it out also because I was a guest recently. We had a really great conversation about how each of them individually got into publishing, what brings them together into podcasting, why they sort of started it, how they have evolved in the indie community, and what they learned from one another. So it's a really great conversation. And if you haven't checked out their podcast, you should. And I hope you really enjoy this. So excited to have the Spa Girls on the KWL podcast. It's so long overdue, which is completely my fault. So I take ownership on that. Thanks for coming and joining us all the way from New Zealand.
Oh, thanks for having us. I'm happy to be here.
So to kick things off, let's maybe go around and if you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. And Cheryl, you're at the top, so I'll start with you.
So I am foremost an author writing cozy mysteries, but started out in romance. Yes, I live in a lovely spot in New Zealand in the country, and I'm a nana to seven grandchildren. What else about me? I just keep busy in the writing world, and as a fellow podcaster, our main aim is to help other authors struggling just as we did in the beginning, and trying to fathom our way through the murky waters, often murky waters, of being an author.
Nice. 7 grandchildren is amazing.
Thank you.
She's an overachiever.
Oh, Wendy, why don't you tell us about yourself?
I've been writing for, 12 years, many years. And I write in probably more than that, actually, right, Trudi, you're right. And I write in 2 genres, historical romance with Wendy Vella, and Lani Blake writes contemporary romance, small town. And I'm a New Zealander as well. And I live near the beach. And I have 4 grandchildren, so not 7. I love being part of the self-publishing industry. The podcast has been amazing, just helping people, and we also get all the amazing knowledge we get from interviewing guests. So that's a real bonus for us. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome.
Trudi.
And last but certainly not least, Trudi, can you tell us about yourself?
I would love to talk about myself for many hours. My name is Trudi.
Now you're just making it weird.
Yeah.
I always make it weird, Cher. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I am an urban fantasy author. I live in a small town in New Zealand. I don't have any grandchildren. I'm falling far behind in that. I only have 1 daughter. And we started up the podcast, it's like 10 years ago now, Spa Girls podcast. And we started it because there was Joanna Penn, and then there was no other female voices in podcasting at the time. And we were like, no, romance is such a big part of the self-publishing industry, specifically because that's where a lot of female writers were. And there were no voices it felt to us at the time for female writers. So we were like, right, we're going to be that voice. And I was a journalist before that. I had done mostly magazine journalism, so not in a podcast format. So it was a massive learning curve for us. But I just love interviewing people each week and learning. And we get to pick who we want to talk to, right? Like, so we go, I want some more information from those people at Kobo. So we're going to get them on and question them.
Again and again.
Really, it's just for us. So that's what we do. And I haven't changed genres. I've only got 1 main genre. And yeah, I think that's me.
And can you each kind of share a brief overview of your journey into indie publishing and what motivated you to choose this path over traditional publishing? Wendy, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. I actually my journey started when I joined Romance Writers of New Zealand. I'd been writing for years, and then I joined RWNZ, and I entered competitions, and I'm someone who needs to do things many times before I'm 100% sure I can actually then venture out into the big wide world. So I entered this one competition for years and eventually won it, and I thought, okay, I'm ready. And so then I published, my first book was picked up by Random House, and I wrote for their Love Swept line. And then after that, I went into self-publishing, and I've self-published 70 plus since. And yeah, that's sort of pretty much my journey has been sort of from the start.
Can I just add something? That Wendy published her first book with Random House, and then she tried to get them to take another one, and she gave them all these other ones, and they were like, no, not that one. No, that's wrong for our market. No, that's terrible. No, da-da-da. And then we convinced Wendy to self-publish this book. She was very reluctant, but she did it anyway. And then that book skyrocketed and was like really successful, far more successful than the book that we published with Random House. And it was the most successful book she had for a long while, and people loved it. And that's what skyrocketed her career. So
I think the thing,
just missing out a couple of things.
Just add that bit in. But I think the thing to remember is also Shar and I, we sort of have been friends for many years and started RWNZ and all that sort of stuff. We only knew one path before indie started, and that was traditional. End of story. So for us, it was all about being traditional. But when the indie world opened, because I'm a very quick writer, it just changed everything. It was a different playing field for me and for Shar, Trudi, like that changed everything for us. So we didn't have to wait for those long, yes, we like your partial, and, so that's my story. Yeah.
What an amazing kind of way to show the value of like those community writing groups like the RWNZ. That's just kind of an immediate, like why you kind of need that author circle around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been lucky enough to have each other. And that's sort of been for years and years. So that's helped. But for me, I needed that validation, and going into that community helped me find the courage to actually publish.
Even things like when you started, like Wendy had this other series that was the Ravens and the Sinclairs, and it has a touch of paranormal in it. And she was like, I'm going to publish it. And Shar, who's the other one of us who's not here today, she was like, no, don't publish it yet. Don't publish it yet. You need to establish yourself a bit more in the non-paranormal area. And then Wendy would be like, no, can I publish it now? And Shar would be like, no, not yet. And she made her publish kind of traditional type of, not traditional, but like non-paranormal historical romance for at least a year, I think it was. I can't
and contemporary too. I didn't do that for 2 years.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. Shar, Trudi and I and Shar were very lucky to find each other early on. Very lucky, because we may argue and bicker and all the rest that goes with being sisters to a degree, but we all have a common goal, and we all know each other very well. And quite often we know what's best for each other before they know what's best for themselves. So it works really. It's true. But yeah. That's my story.
Mm-hmm. That's so special, the friendship you guys have, because writing can be so isolating. So it's nice that you have each other to kind of lean off of, and for so long.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't take it for granted, that's for sure.
Yeah. Trudi, what about you? How did you get started in indie?
Indie always kind of made sense to me. Like I published, I don't even remember. I guess I maybe tried to get traditionally published in the early days, but I always just remember indie. It was just when I was ready to publish, it was there. I think Wendy had already published her book. We were learning about it at the time, and I went into it. So there was no big kind of, shall I choose trad or indie? And because I had been a magazine editor, I knew about kind of printing and organizing stuff. I knew about, I worked in InDesign. I had some of the technical knowledge. Well, sometimes it felt like I was running through mud trying to figure stuff out with self-publishing in the early days. But I remember having to format a print book in Word, and now there's Vellum and you just press the button. Like the differences to how things are done these days. But anyway, at the time I I liked the control. I liked being able to make my decisions for myself, and that's what, so it was never really should I do trad or should I do self-publishing? And I don't say that I would never do traditional publishing. It's just, for me, it's always just made more sense to be a self-publisher.
And when you say early days, when are you talking?
Yeah, well, not early days even, but just when I started. So I think
Trudi and I published our first book in 2014, and Wendy was the year before in 2013.
Wow. Yeah, that is really like the beginning of like the indie platforms and tools being available.
The tool, especially. I think we missed the huge, the real kick that people got in about 2012. I think we kind of missed that by a couple of years, but we were certainly not late developers in the indie world. That's for sure.
But there's definitely all those tools like Vellum and Scrivener. Yeah. I don't remember when that came in, but that wasn't
I don't remember that either.
No, not Scrivener.
All these things that we've seen developing over time. Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, like everybody's story, I wrote for a long, long time, and I got married very, very young, and I was working in a bank at the time. So I can say that I was really good at English at school. I can say that. And then I did a whole lot of correspondence courses for writing, because I just loved it so much. I wrote for my children from when they were babies, and was always like making up stories. When they went to bed, I didn't always have a book. I'd tell them a story instead, make it up, and did that with my grandchildren as well. But when we were going to conferences, and it was even a few years before I met Wendy, but when found each other at a conference one year, and Wendy and I had started sharing a room because the woman that I was sharing with decided that she couldn't make it anymore. So Wendy and I, we are very much alike in so many ways, and it just gelled. And then when we found Shar and Trudi at a conference, it was just a natural connection that we had, because we are very different people in a lot of ways. I say Wendy and I do have more in common. That's an age thing, our children, how we grew up, all that sort of thing. But the four of us bring so many different aspects to what we do as a podcast, but as a team, and we are a team, that, pushing each other towards the indie career just made everything easier. And it wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy, but it made everything easy because we had each other to lean on and to ask questions of. And, the biggest thing is actually pushing each other out of your comfort zone and, pushing through that fear of actually publishing that first book, because it's huge. It's a big deal. You're putting yourself out there for people to judge you, and they do, but also, will the book fail? Will the book succeed? We all want it to be the best book. We all want it to be that outlier that hits, and they very rarely do. It's a small percentage, and accepting that within the group is far easier than trying to accept it on your own, because you think of yourself as, what did I do wrong? And there are so many things to do differently that it's not really a case of that anymore. And hopefully that answered your question. Went off on a bit of a tangent there. But basically 2013, Wendy put her book out, and she was on our backs to do the same. And then Trudi and I, next year, we caved. And we've never looked back. I think I have nearly 50 books out. So in two genres. So I write as Cheryl Phipps in romance, and Cozy Mysteries as C.A. Phipps, which has arguably done it for me. It's where I'm the most successful.
I love that. So there's been so much kind of change throughout the years with indie publishing, like we've alluded to, like far more tools and things at authors' disposal right now. So what would you say are some of the most important lessons that you've learned about self-publishing, or what do you wish you had known at the beginning?
That not everything you hear is right, and that not everything you hear is right for you. I think one of Wendy's favourite sayings is there's not one way. And there really isn't. We've spoken to the most amazing, successful authors who don't do things the way that we do it. And sometimes we've tried their way, and we've encouraged other people to try their way. But we never ever say on our podcast that you have to do this. Well, maybe a few things. Get a good editor and get a good cover, blah blah blah. But the rest of it really is trial and error. It's like doing ads. You've just got to keep testing until you find the right way for you.
Yeah. I think for me, think it's about sifting through all the noise. There's so much noise around indie publishing, so much you can read about and so many people talk about. I think, and finding those core people that you really respect and trust and following what they are doing if you need an example. I think that's hugely important. I think understanding that you will make mistakes. Nothing's ever perfect. But in indie, it's so much easier to fix those mistakes. I think that's a massive thing. For me, it's like finding your tribe and understanding that you will make mistakes. I think also in not trying too much at once. I mean, I'm a terrible person that if I see something online and it's working for someone, I'm like, I need to try that instantly. And it's not always for me. So I've actually had to back away from that sort of thing and I just focus on what I can do. Yeah, those are probably my tips, I would say.
And that can be really hard in podcasting because every week we get a new exciting guest on who's telling us a new and exciting way to do something. And we'll get off the call and be like, BookBub ads, right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. We should totally be doing special editions, or what else can we? Translations. They sound really awesome. Like, I know I'm supposed to be writing the next book, but I think maybe think that people are listening to podcasts and kind of doing the same thing. And I think that's what we've learned the hard way, because we have done many, many things and tried many, many different things. Is it actually, when we're getting these people on, the vast majority of them are not doing everything, and they have become successful by narrowing their focus and only doing a couple of things, like, i.e. writing, and one other way to kind of visibly be discovered. So that would be the thing. And the other thing that we try to promote on the podcast, and Cher's kind of talked about it a little bit, is we are, all four of us, very different people, and we go about things. Even Cheryl and Wendy, who are a little bit the same, are very different in how they approach certain things, and we all do things differently. We all have certain processes, things that we are trying out and not trying out, that's different for all of us. And we try and say that all the time. It's like you can be successful in so many different ways within the self-publishing industry. You don't have to follow that one. Just because that person made it successful doing this one thing doesn't mean that it's your journey or how you're going to be successful. And I think that's something that really helps me as well, like to kind of know that it's okay that I don't do this one thing that other person said was the only way that they got to be making millions or whatever. Like there's so many different ways to be successful, and different people. Like, I don't know, everyone's done Becca Syme's Clifton Strengths, I feel like, but and if you looked at all of our strengths, we're all, you would laugh. And in fact, to the point of the strengths, is like Cheryl and Wendy were refusing to do them for many years. They were like, no, I don't agree with it. I disapprove of the strengths. I'm not going to do it. And then
I don't know that we disapproved. Yes. We just wasn't for us,
We had a look. Anyway, we had Becca at the New Zealand conference, I think, just last year, and she kind of she got Cheryl. Cheryl was the last holdout, and she convinced Cheryl that to do the streaks and everything. But anyway, that's beside the point. We're all very different, and we do things in a different way, and we can all be successful, and that's awesome. So, yeah,
I think that actually highlights the fact of what Becca said to me. She said, because we had a long discussion about it, and I told her my feelings on the subject, and she said to me, if you don't feel that this is for you, you just don't have to do it. And that freed me up. That freed me up because I felt like everybody was saying, you have to do this. You will not be a good writer. You will not be a good person. You will not be well-rounded if you don't do this, which is not true. But I did do it, and I did get some learnings out of it. So, there you go. Sometimes you can be stubborn.
To the point of cutting your nose
older
off.
Generation are. Pardon?
To cut your nose off to spite your face. Yeah,
exactly.
As I believe the saying.
I think it's really nice. You've kind of highlighted one of my favorite things about working in this community and getting to work with authors like yourselves is that, like, for sure there is an aspect of competition, but it's not what's driving people. Like, it's not the same as, like, you think about any other business where people wouldn't be as open or willing to share things that are working for them. So there's such a supportive element to the community. There's so many, like, women that are leading the charge in that. And, like, that's something that I always feel really grateful about when I guess when you try and describe what you do to people and you're like explaining it, and I'm like, no, it's awesome. It's like get to work with all these authors, and you guys just are very supportive of one another.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's something we've always done. Because we've all had our ups and downs, and we've been in various different situations in our lives, and we've always been there for each other. And I think that's really important in this industry, like you say, because you're on your own most of the time.
And I think also speaking to people that you can say, oh my gosh, did you see this, or what do you think about that? And you're going to get an honest answer. It's not something that somebody's telling you because they think that's what you want to hear. I think that's very important. And that
it's a safe space.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's a safe space. What comes between us doesn't go anywhere else, which is great too.
Except when you're recording the podcast.
Oh, yeah, then it's all out. All the dirty laundry.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into my next question, which is about the podcast. But first, I want to say congratulations because you guys have hit over 480 podcast episodes. So that's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk a little bit about what inspired you to start the Self-Publishing Authors podcast, and how has the podcast evolved since its inception, which, as we said before, is 2015. So you guys have been doing it for a long time.
I think we were bullied into it, weren't we, Wendy?
I actually think I was the one who brought it up first, and then Trudi picked it up and ran with it.
Was that how it happened?
Yeah, it did.
The stories change.
The funniest thing of it all,
episode.
Remember, we went away for the weekend. We thought we'll go away and we'll do some recording. Horrific. It was so bad. Oh my Lord. We were like, Trudi was like, everyone relax. Stop reading off your papers. You don't need to read. Just be natural.
It was awful. I was trying to. They were like, we need a script, and then I was sitting there listening to them read off the piece of paper exactly what they'd written down, and I was like, this isn't going to work. Like, we can't do this.
It was terrible. Absolutely shocking.
I don't think it got good for quite a few.
No. Few times.
A couple of years.
But I think the reason we started was because when we started, there wasn't a lot of information out there with regards to indie and with support. And we were always like, oh, how do we do this? And I remember Cheryl and I got Vellum and we didn't use it for ages because neither of us knew how to. And in the end, we plucked up the courage to find a video to follow it and do it. Like we wanted a space where we could have people ask us questions and then get experts in to share that knowledge with other people, as well as learnings for us. I'm not a book reader or a course taker in any way, shape or form. So for me, it was my learnings are on. They're laughing because this is contention with all of us.
You just said you're not a book reader.
No. How about
how to?
Non-fiction? How to? Yeah, self-help book. So for me, every Thursday, I get to learn from the best. I don't need to learn from anyone else. So, we wanted to share that, didn't we?
Yeah, and I find a supportive space, right? Like, so you're kind of saying that, but it was like kind of acknowledging that maybe we didn't know what we were doing, and maybe this is, like asking questions from a place of like, actually, this makes no sense to me. And how on earth do you use Vellum or whatever? Like, how does it work when you upload to Amazon? And what does it mean, this stupid button here? And that and kind of saying, well, if we can do it, you can too. And kind of providing that supportive space, because otherwise it can feel quite daunting and kind of intimidating when you first come in. And that's actually the other thing. We've always aimed at kind of the beginner level. Like we've always said, our kind of avatar, the person that we're aiming for is that kind of beginner level person who's trying to figure out how on earth to do this. And we've always sort of said when we're getting guests on, it's like, oh, what would and we called her Jasmine.
Jasmine. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Her name was Jasmine, man. We came up with it
early on.
What would
Jasmine do? Or what would Jasmine be interested in? And that was how we made decisions on guests and things like that. Like, and we had and as much as it was sometimes for us and what we wanted on and what was interesting to us, we would always make sure that the questions that we were asking was going to be something that Jasmine would get something out of. And that was actually also my big thing, was like making sure it was a podcast where there was actually information that someone could take away and use, so it wasn't just people talking and idealizing or whatever, it was
current information.
Practical.
Current
useful
as well. Yeah.
I think the thing is, though, like, because we've been nearly 10 years, that the information has changed, and we've had a little bit of people saying, oh, well, you said this here and then this here, but that is the industry, right? It just changes all the time, and that's why we have always tried to get guests on, or our topics have been relevant to what's happening now. We've tried to stay away from anything that is a little bit niggly, and we've just tried to keep it, very sort of for newbies starting out in the industry. That's been a real thing for us.
Nice. That's kind of a good segue into the next question we have, actually, because you're aiming at new authors. Even now, like, what are some sort of common mistakes that you see people making? And what would you say for authors who are kind of like looking to begin their journey and avoid making maybe common mistakes?
The number one mistake that newbie authors make, and this is a generalization, but I think it's a high percentage, is they want to do everything now. They absolutely want they want to publish that book now, regardless if it's ready, or they just want to do Facebook, do TikTok, and there isn't enough time in a day to do all the things while you're learning to be a good author. There's just not enough time.
I think also getting those basics right is something people tend to think they're going to put their first book up. And I was the prime example of this. I was like, I've published my first book. I'm just going to sit back and wait for that money to roll in now. I'm going to be a huge success. But that's actually not going to happen. Very rare that it's going to happen unless you're an outlier these days. There's just too much saturation in the market. There's just so much out there happening. So I think for us, we really preach just do the basics right. Start off small, get your good cover, get your editing done, those real basics, make sure your blurb is really rocking, and then just work on one or two things. We're huge advocates of not putting a whole lot of money into your first book. We think you're better off actually working on your next one, getting that ready, making sure your pre-orders are up and stuff. That's sort of where we come from.
Yeah, definitely.
Any advice for beginner authors or mistakes that you see people still making?
I think it's the trying to do everything thing, like doing too much and then not doing. It's like that whole jack of all trades thing. Have you? I don't know. It's like master of none, right? Like, so I think if you try and do a little bit of everything, you just can't do any of it. Like none of it's going to be done to a high standard. And what you want is to stand out. And the way you're going to stand out is if you've got the basics, like Wendy was saying, an amazing cover, amazingly well edited book that you've kind of worked hard on and done to the best of your ability, like the blurb, everything like that, done as well as you possibly can. And guaranteed you'll look back in 2 years and go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. But at the time, like for where you were at that time, making it as good as you can make it, and then move on to the next book. And we do see, like, we've done coaching where people are like trying to, for example, I want my cover to stand out. I don't want to do the same. I'm going to be in historical romance, but I'm not going to do one of those historical romance covers. I'm going to put a spaceship on it because that's going to be different and that'll stand out. And
a historical spaceship.
Historical though. It'll be a historical spaceship. Or trying to do, that's another one, cross genre. I mean, that's a big mistake I made early on, was writing cross genre, and I learnt my lesson and don't do that anymore. But someone going, I'm going to do this new genre. It's going to be a romance, but there won't be a happily ever after. And it's going to, people are going to love it, or, those kind of things. Or trying not to, like, I don't want to follow a structure in my novel, like the 3-act structure. That's old. I'm going to write everything backwards. That's innovation. And like just stuff like that, where people are trying to go
don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, it's like
honestly,
not when you first start out.
But if you are wanting to do, if you wanted to make this your career, if you want to have longevity, if you want to earn money from it, you want to know the industry, you want to be reading books in your genre, you want to know your genre inside out and write a book that those readers are going to love. And they love that genre for a reason, and they don't want, spaceships and historicals, and that's just the way it goes. So stuff like that, like newbies coming in and they just want to be different, and that doesn't always work, and then try not to do everything.
And find those authors that you really respect and enjoy and like, and see what they're doing right.
Yeah.
Solid advice. I would expect nothing less than from the Spa Girls. Let's chat a little bit about trends that are happening in the industry, because indie publishing loves a trend and would love to kind of pivot and change toward things. So just wondering, what are kind of current trends that authors should be aware of and how can they leverage them? I'll do a little shout out to Kobo Plus being the non-exclusive subscription, which isn't a trend. It's here to stay, but that's something that people can be aware of. But what do you guys think? What are people talking about right now?
Special editions, huge.
Special editions are huge.
And romantasy is huge. So that with special editions seems to be going gangbusters. Yeah, I think I'm just trying to think of some of the programs that have come out recently that people are really looking into.
Trending.
Yeah.
There's so many. I mean, I think the thing with trends is you've got to be very careful to jump on them. I mean, you get those people that hit them perfectly and they're like, and they're away and they're doing so well, right?
Yeah.
But I think you've got to be also mindful of longevity and writing in something that in 5 years people are still going to want to read. You know, if you're building a career for the future, I think. But with where trends are going, there are so many new ones, I can't keep up with them all.
Well, translations are huge at the moment.
Huge,
as well.
Yeah, big, yeah.
Huge. And in specific markets, but of course, a lot of people are trying other markets as well. And I think that's interesting. That interests me, that people aren't just thinking of the basic markets. They're looking further, you know, like Portugal and places like that. And, you know, I think that's interesting. It's still like you still have to get to that level, you know what I mean? You still have to have a few books up before you invest in things like these. But special editions are not cheap. So if you don't have a decent audience, then who are you going to be selling them to? You know what I mean? Your readers will love it if they know it's there, but there still has to be a certain type of reader, a super fan, really.
Yeah, because we've been around so long. I remember back in the day, there was a certain podcast with certain people on it who, one of the guys was always like, direct sales. Everyone's going to be direct sales. That's the way forward. It's where it's all going. And I remember listening to that thinking, that's ridiculous. Who is going to go directly to one author's website and, you know, like Amazon or the other platform, Kobo, or that's the way forward. Like, why would we ever go direct to it? And now look at us with all the direct sales on all the different platforms as well as. So that is something else. And I know I'm probably like, oh no, Kobo doesn't. Yeah. But I think you guys are all about the wide sales and being everywhere possible. And I think that's something that is awesome. I love the fact that I can be on so many different platforms and have so many different opportunities through so many different in so many different countries. So that's what's awesome for us now as authors, because it used to be like this little narrow thing that you could go on to smaller, and it's getting wider and wider for us. And I think that can only help our careers. The other one I remember is fast versus slow. And there was a while there where everything was like, you have to get a book up a month. It's the only way you can do this. And you need there's a 30-day cliff, and there's whatever. There's these things that you have to do really fast, and it's the only way to keep readers interested, and all these kinds of things. And now we see so many authors just writing amazing books, and however long it takes them, and putting it up on all the platforms, and they're earning the same kind of money, like it is possible to do things your way and put it up on all the platforms and have it be awesome. And it doesn't have to be that. There was almost a desperation or a panickiness towards that we that I felt. I felt it. I was like trying to write faster than is my natural speed, trying to get stuff up really quickly. Mainly because Wendy writes really fast naturally, and it's really annoying.
American Itis Strudels, we talked about that, okay?
So we were talking about trends a little bit. And as indies, I always wonder, do you feel the pressure to kind of write to market to keep up with the different genres or tropes that are trending? You mentioned romantasy, Cheryl. Mm-hmm. Is there a lot of pressure to kind of jump in when those trends go off?
I think you always have a slight urge thinking to yourself, I could write that. And in actual fact, when I started Cozy Mysteries, I was happy writing them. I don't tend to write anything too woo or anything like that. And then Paranormal Cozy Mysteries took off. And I was thinking, well, is it such a stretch if I don't write anything too scary that I won't be able to sleep? And so I did. So I just added a touch of magic that's not really huge to Paranormal Cozy Mysteries. And my audience loves them. So I guess that was kind of writing to market, but not too outside my my wheelhouse.
And I remember when you started doing Cozy Mysteries, we were at this cafe in Auckland. I can't remember and we were like out for an evening, and she was like, "I've decided to move away from romance and do Cozy Mysteries." And we were all like, "Really? I don't know about this, Cher. This seems like a terrible idea." And then she did them.
Some of us were.
Really well.
Some of us thought it was a great idea.
I feel like we all know, but anyway,
No.
but she did it anyway. More power to her, because she's always trying new stuff. She's the one who's she always tries the new and different things. She's always the one who dips her toe in first to different things. It's really cool. But then then the same again for the paranormal. We're like, Cher, you're doing really well with the cozies. Maybe you should just stay. And then the paranormal ones have done really, really well. So it's kind of just goes to show that even though the group is awesome sometimes, but sometimes you just have to make those decisions that are right for you, and it's worked out really well for us. So that's really cool too. And we've definitely had people on the podcast who've seen a trend and jumped on it and done really well with it. And there's always that temptation. Like I've used, for example, K-Lytics to find trending things. And like one of the ones I was looking at was Demon Hunter. And I was like, right, I'm going to write a Demon Hunter series. But then I don't know, something happened with it. And I love those books, and they're awesome books. I think they're amazing. They just don't sell as well. And I don't know what it is that I've done with them, but they just don't hit as much as some of my other series. And that was my attempt to write to trend and do something that was a bit more on trend, and it didn't quite work for me. So I don't think that it's always guaranteed that you're going to get anywhere with your trending or with the trends that you spot.
Yeah.
And you're actually better off trying to kind of write what's good for you in the genres that you like. And unless it happens to be a trending thing that works for you. Like I think cozy fantasy is one that they're talking about recently, that it's a kind of an up and coming trend, and like Cheryl has just kind of fallen into that really easily and is doing really well, and that's kind of worked. I mean, had you heard of cozy fantasy, Cher, when you started doing it?
No. And sometimes it honestly is just the luck of timing, because even when you see a trend, by the time you've written, one, but you kind of need at least three to make your mark in any sort of genre, it could have passed, like reverse harems and things like that. I mean, they just took off. They were like absolutely manic for a few years, but you don't hear about them. I mean, they're there. Obviously, they're there. But you don't hear about them in the same way as you are hearing about romantasy.
And I think the thing is, if you're gonna follow trends, you've got to really jump on and get some books out. You can't think that you're going to hit a trend and it's going to take off until you give it a couple of books or 2 or 3 books in. And then if you change again, then you've got to start on another market again. And some people do that and they do really well at it, but that's just not in my wheelhouse. I don't think I could do something like that.
Just sounds really tiring.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Well, we've spoken to some authors that have had so many pen names and then they just retire them. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't like to think of any book being a waste of my time, but seriously, that, the whole setup of websites and, social media and all that sort of thing for a name that, you had for a year or two, that would break my heart.
Well, also it kind of goes against the whole thing about, writing the next book, because then you can continuously market the books that you already have. So if you're kind of retiring them, you're losing out on the opportunity to like bundle and like discount and get readers that way. That
and backlist, right? Backlist is huge for selling, for being able to use for marketing purposes. And and the thing is, you can repurpose it by, change covers, change blurbs, whatever, get it re-edited, all of the things. But if you haven't got that backlist, that's not earning you your money,
So let's talk a little bit about marketing for if this was a brand new author. So this is Jasmine, you said, I believe is your author avatar.
Yeah.
You know, you're building your backlist. You're not quite there yet, but how do you start marketing as an indie author?
Slowly. You do things like BookBub pre-orders, where you can get a couple that are really cheap, one after the other. So you'll do one, say a month out, and you'll do another, say a couple of weeks out before the pre-order. And I think that's probably, depending on how many people you have on BookBub, and you do need some to make it worthwhile, it's probably only going to cost you about $20-$30 if you don't have a huge list of people. But I think doing swaps using BookFunnel in your genre, people, please. Just swap in your genre. And they're all free. Things like that are free. But also utilising some of the Facebook groups and meet some authors on there and actually make a connection, make the time to gain a connection with people that you can reciprocate in your genre.
And I think another thing is building that email newsletter list.
That's probably foremost.
That's huge because you own that. That's yours. Get that email newsletter list growing. Give them, I don't know, excerpts, whatever. Even if your book's not published yet, start just trying to get people on your list that isn't your nana, your auntie, and your great aunt. Try and get it to grow, because that, when you send that out every month with a new release, that is an instant sales tool. Right there. There are the newsletter lists, but you can, some of those ones. What are those newsletter sign-ups? You can get book sweeps and things like, you were saying there's all of those sort of things. I think it's budget depending too.
Yes.
I think it depends on what you as a newbie author have to spend, and you've really got to think very carefully about where you're going to spend that money. We talked covers and we talked editing. They're a no-brainer, but I wouldn't go over the top if you, like I said, for a new book. I don't
make a budget. Make a budget for each book, and you can increase that as you get down the track. But for your first book, it should just be really, really what you can afford.
Get into the community, build your community.
And build the basics in, like we've kind of talked about it before, like actually having an awesome blurb that kind of tells readers what's in the book and isn't just a synopsis, and you know the keywords of your genre, that know what people are going to be attracted to within there. Know your hooks and make sure that they're in the blurb and on the back of your book, and have make sure it's really well edited, and make sure that when someone does pick it up, they're gonna think this is an amazing book, because word of mouth actually can be one of the most powerful things that you have. And if you've got this book that's not actually up to where it needs to be because you've been in a rush and you really wanted just to get the book out to say that you've got the book out, I don't mean to delay it and procrastinate and kind of stall because you're worried about it, but just make sure it's ready, make sure that it's where it needs to be before you put it up.
And that's the biggest marketing tool, right? To make sure that you give what you're giving them, because you're only going to get one shot, right, at hooking them. If they read your first book and it's badly edited and the blurb's terrible and the cover, they're going to, I'm not going back there again.
Yeah.
And it's also a good idea, if you can manage it, to hold that book until you've at least got some way into the second book, so that you've got somewhere to lead them. So having a book in your back matter, having a link in your back matter to another book coming, even if it's a year away, it still puts it on the radar. And the people buying your book, the first book in the future, that will always be there, that link, so you will be gaining people as time goes on, however slow that may be, but it's something.
And we also always talk about, like, when you first start out, not spending lots of money on the book and budgeting and stuff. But I kind of think when you're first starting out, often you'll have another job, and I think actually this is a point at which you should start saving money and have it they're ready for you when you want to start marketing. And I wouldn't market just too much on one book. You need it 2 or 3 books before you can really, because you need the read through. You need to be able to have that first book there, and then for there to be other books in the series for it to go through to, for you to actually make money on it. So you should save money, get decent covers, get decent editing, and then use it for a bit of marketing. And then, as for the get an awesome second cover, you know, like if you're starting out. And I think with writing and publishing, I always think, you know, what other business would you expect to start up with nothing? Like you buy a cafe, a business, you know that there's going to be startup costs. You know that maybe you're not going to make money right away. You're going to have to pay for the rent and the power and the staff and all those things. And then you're going to have to build up your business. And so for us to say, so maybe I have a different opinion on this to these two, but I'm like, for us to say, I'm going to start up this business and I'm going to do it with like no money and I'm just going to try and do it as budget as possible. I kind of think, well, why? To give yourself the best possible success, why wouldn't you try and get an awesome cover and, you know, pay a really fantastic designer to do that for you? And why wouldn't you get an awesome editor? And why, you know, I think,
it all comes down to budget.
Yeah,
it's all down to budget.
And when you're a young family or you're working or you're working full time at another job and it is about time, you know, some of those things are really important to do right away, and some of them can just wait. You know, if you're not going to put your book up for a pre-order, you don't need the cover right now. You know, it can take you a while to find somebody that you can afford that you really love the cover of. And for goodness sake, there's nothing wrong with pre-mades when you're starting out.
Exactly.
I can tell you that from personal experience.
Hey, Facebook, you know, get onto Facebook, get your Facebook group, Facebook page, things like that, you know, like that's all free. You know, Insta, TikTok, they're all free things you can do.
Yeah, you don't do them all.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying if you're one of those tech-savvy people, not like us.
Yes.
That's another point, is to reuse your content in multiple places. In the same way that it's fantastic to have your books wide, you can use the same content on Insta and Facebook and Twitter and just repeat it through the different things, because it's different audiences in different places, and that's no one's going to growl at you and tell you off. It's fine. So don't use your time wisely, and don't think you have to do whole new content in all the different places. That would be something else. Anyway, I don't know.
so many great tips there for sure. One of the things that I want to touch on is, how do you balance the creative aspects of your writing with the business side of self-publishing? And do you have any tips for managing both of them effectively? A bit of a hard one.
It's changed for all of us.
That's evolved over the years. I've got an assistant now who does 25 hours.
We all do, but we didn't start out that way.
Yeah, but we've all got. Yeah, I mean, I think we have to sit down every week or every month. Well, she's my daughter, so she does as she's told. But we sit down and we.
She's in charge of Wendy, and Wendy knows it.
She's a boss of me. Let's be honest. We all know that for the truth. But we sit down and we work through our goals for the month. You know, what needs to be hit for marketing and stuff. And I think having 2 pen names, twice the work, and as you get more successful, almost you do have to do more work to keep everybody happy. So for us, it's about, and I'm not a huge rule follower or calendar follower, and she's a real numbers girl. So she will just say to me, Mum, you need to do this, and Mum, you need to do that, if I'm being honest, and I'll do it. But it isn't, for me, the writing is my main key. That's really my main focus. And TikTok. I do one genre, she does the other. And then, of course, socials as well, like take a photo of me drinking a cup of coffee in the morning and send it to her, much as I hate doing that. But, you know, so for me, she's the one who schedules and says, right, we're doing this, this and this, and then we just work through. But, yeah, you have to be organised, and I'm probably the most unorganised person I know. So it's not easy.
And yet the most successful.
Yeah.
I have a lady in the States who does my graphics for Facebook and puts them up for me, just on on my Cozy Pen name, not on my private group. I prefer to handle that myself. But that's all she does, which is really good around new releases and all that sort of thing, because I don't have to stress about it. She's got it all, and she'll take snippets and reviews and put them on my posts, which is great. And then my husband does my books for me, my accounts, and I do everything else. And, yeah, I do struggle sometimes with it, but I run a really tight diary, and I write
You want to see her diary, man? So
everything.
Scary.
My whole life is in there, like what I do, personally and professionally, because the two are often intertwined, you know, like, I need to know. memory's not
She's
what
like
it used to
the most organised person you would ever meet. Honestly, next level. I also meant to say that I actually pay someone to do my marketing, my Facebook ads. So that gets done by someone
And
else.
your husband does your books as well.
He does my account books, yeah.
For me, it's more like I get up early and write because that's when I know is my best writing time. And I can almost just, like, things that seemed really difficult the day before, early morning, I can fix them. Like, it just makes sense to me. So I will kind of try and, I won't, as much as I can, I won't book stuff in the mornings. I won't do other stuff in the mornings. And then the afternoons, I do any admin that I need to do. The lady I had as an assistant, she actually quit last year in December because she had another job as well, and that was taking over what she was doing. So, we're still friends. It wasn't like she ran off in a huff or anything. It's just to make that clear. So I'm just doing stuff myself. Just wanted to make it. And so I'm doing most other stuff now myself. But I've my word of the year, because I'm into that kind of stuff, I chose clarity. And I think what I'm trying to do is not my temptation, the thing that I always want to do is to do everything. And so what I'm trying to do this year is just to make it really simple on myself, and just, like, I have a big list and I'm just going to go through those things and try not to be tempted by all the other amazing things that are out there, and just to, like, kind of be clear, have clarity, not get overwhelmed by trying to do everything. So I think that follows through into the admin and those kinds of things that I'm doing. The marketing is just to not let it overwhelm me, and just keep myself clear. And the most important thing in my mind is the writing and getting more books done. So that comes first, and everything else comes second.
I'm impressed that you're maintaining your word of the year outside of January passing. That's usually when I give up of, like, all of my goals. They're all gone. So hats off to you.
I'm doing okay. I'm clinging to it with it.
No, that's awesome. So just to wrap up, I guess I would like to know, what do you guys see as the future of self-publishing? Like, where do you think it's going? Any sort of predictions or things that you'd like to see happening in the industry?
I'd like to see a bit more kindness out there. We've been very spoilt with having so many people help us out and having great communities, and just seems to be a little bit of niggles out there, which I don't appreciate. And that's a bit disappointing. But I think on the whole, the indie publishing industry is just getting bigger and better and brighter, and there's a lot to look forward to. And there's a lot of things out there that are going to make life easier for us. We don't touch much on AI, but obviously that's foremost in everybody's minds. And it definitely is a tool. And if you think you're not using it already, then I have to say you're wrong, because we're using it in our editing processes. And I wouldn't be without it. I wouldn't be without Pro Writing Aid for a start. I think that those are the things for me, just being positive. Because if you love your job, that's half the battle, and you can love your job better if everybody around you is, in a good space too.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen some changes over time, and and all these new programs, all the new things to make writing easier in terms of, like, I keep saying it, Vellum and putting the books up, and everything.
Episode sponsored by Vellum.
Yeah, I know.
I reckon definitely.
But that was just something that pops to mind, that I remember the hours it took me to figure out how to format this stupid book.
I remember those hours. I spent those hours with you, Trudi. We remember.
Yeah. And now it's honestly the button. You just press the button. Anyway, and so there's loads of stuff like that happening, like Kickstarter, 5 years, I don't know how long they've been around, but let's say 5 years ago, we would have been like, what? Why? Special editions, like, honestly.
Right, we didn't even know about them, right? We just, they were...
Yeah,
and they're just gorgeous.
Like beautiful books in the world. Even just like TikTok, how TikTok came along, and suddenly everyone's buying print books again. And I would, before that, I would have said, "Oh no, print's dead." Who reads print books anymore? Everyone reads on the e-reader. So so I sort of feel sometimes it's hard to know where things are going to go, like, and what the changes might be. I just think there'll be some new cool thing around the corner, like the special editions coming up, or all these things that we'll get to do. That's something different and something more fun. Yeah, I just
think that you have to roll with it too. You know, like at my age, when new things come along, I mean, I'm not a dinosaur, but I'm getting there. But something new will come along, and I'm like, oh, do I have to learn that now, please? You know, but
I feel like that too. Don't worry about it.
but I'm really lucky, and so Shar. I mean, not that she's a dinosaur either, but Trudi and Shar love to learn. So we just, you know, it's like the front line. We just send them in and we make them learn, and then they sort of sift it down and give it to us in layman's terms, so we understand it. But you know, change is inevitable, and you just have to roll with it. You know. Yeah. And I think if you are too stuck in your ways in this business, forget it. It's just the way it is. You know, we went through KU changes. We went through, you know, Kindle Unlimited, all of the page read changes and stuff. Everything's changes eventually. So you just
from when we first started, it's been huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's all a learning curve.
It's like that tactics versus strategy thing. And I always forget which way around it goes, whether a tactic or a strategy. But I think it's the tactic is the overarching and the strategy is the overarching, the tactic is the lower down stuff. And as long as you know where your overarching goals are and what you're trying to achieve overall, then when you're making decisions on the individual kind of tactics, I think I have this around the wrong way, I'm sorry if I don't, then you can kind of, you know, like, is this tactic going to work for me with my overall goal of whatever? And if it doesn't, then don't do it. And whatever comes along, I think you can kind of make decisions like that. So whatever new thing happens, and I don't know exactly what that will be, you just make a decision based on that. And not everything will be for everyone. Like, not everyone's going to do translations, and that's okay. So, you know, we've had people on who are just doing awesome at audio and they're not really doing anything else, you know, like, or print books are the way they're making their money and they don't really sell many ebooks. Like, it's just possible to do it in any way you want. And
which is because really.
Yeah. It's not a one shoe fits all. It never has been. Everyone's different. And I think that's important to know that because so-and-so is doing well and you're not doing as well doing what they are doing, you can pivot very easily and go, okay, well, I'm going to try this thing. You know, and that's the good thing about this business. It's not like a heart surgeon where you can't cut that valve instead of that valve. You know, this is really important.
You can't accidentally take the lung out instead of doing
it. Oops, I got the liver instead of the heart. But you know what I mean. You can pivot very easily in this business. Yeah.
It's kind of like what we say at Kobotar, that there's no ebook emergency. It's kind of similar to that. Yeah. Like, again, we're not doing heart surgery over here.
It's been the mantra throughout the years. There's no such thing as an ebook emergency.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all for some really great advice. I think there's a lot of Jasmines out there who are going to learn a lot from this episode for sure. And as we end off, where can listeners find you online?
We can be found at Spa Girls Podcast pretty much everywhere. And we're also on Patreon. And Shar usually does this. So that's my feeble attempt. Spa Girls Podcast everywhere.
You can put Spa Girls Podcast. You'll find us everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. It's been lovely talking to you all.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. It's been a great time.
Yeah. We've enjoyed it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in listening to the Spa Girls, we'll include links to their podcast in our show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us at kobowritinglife.com. And be sure to follow us on socials. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads.
This episode was hosted by Tara Kremen and Laura Granger, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and a huge thanks to the Spa Girls for being our guest. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.